Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the TrainAid HQ. My name is Nick, and in today's video, we are looking at the CAVA assessing qualification. And the purpose of the video is to give you a talk-through guide of vocational assessment number 2. So this video is part of our portfolio of completed assessments. And we're just going to break down the different stages of this assessment template and give you some pointers and ideas on how to complete each of your assessment templates if you're studying on the CAVA or one of our assessing courses. Once again, please do like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel to receive the latest alerts and updates from the team. Okay. So just in front of me, we have our vocational assessment templates. Okay. If you are filling this out, please make sure that you fill out the candidate assessor details. Now, the candidate assessor is you who is undertaking the qualification. So I put my name there. We also have the course location or the format. So if you're on the classroom course, the webinar, or the online self-paced qualification, please put that in along with your course start date. So the date you started your course. Now, the second box on the first page, we have the assessments and learner details. Remember, this is the person you are assessing. So the person you are assessing can be a colleague. This could be an apprentice, a learner. It could be a manager, for example. But the person you are assessing, they should have some knowledge of your subject area. So I've chosen one of my colleagues. He is a first aid trainer. His name is Billy Wallace. The assessment location, we need to input where the assessment will take place. This assessment will take place in the TrainAid HQ based in Reigate, Surrey, and I've also put the date of the assessment as well. As you can see here, I've highlighted the assessment. This is a vocational assessment. Okay, we've undertaken vocational 1. This is vocational 2. Okay, so that is our front sheet. Now, the second section is the initial assessment. So this section is all about finding out about the learner who is undertaking the assessment. So it's very important we provide the reader here with lots of information regarding the learner and how experienced they are. So my colleague is Billy Wallace. He is a qualified first aid trainer. So please put the name of the learner there just at the top under the initial assessment page. Okay. The next step is a series of questions just to find out some more information just about the learner. So the first question is, how experienced is the learner that you will be assessing? So please do describe the learner and their current role. Billy has been a first aid trainer for 10 years here at TrainAid. He is completing the 2-day first aid at work refresher course. Okay, so this is a vocational assessment, otherwise known as a training assessment. So I am going to observe Billy within just a training room, and he is going to be demonstrating his CPR skills, which I'll come on to very shortly. There are other key questions that you need to answer. Describe the environment that the assessment will take place in. Please include as many details as possible, such as the time, the location, the venue, and also the conditions of the environment. So vocational 2, this is an observation within a training room. So this is where Billy is going to be demonstrating his CPR skills. So Billy has been on the course at Hamilton House for 2 days, so just undertaking some refresher training for CPR. The practical assessments will take place in a training room on a one-to-one basis. So it's just going to be me observing Billy as well. The next step is to describe the qualification or criteria that the learner will be assessed for. So please be aware that for every vocational assessment, especially when you're observing a learner, you need to use some type of standards or criteria. So my standards are taken from the FAIB, which is the first aid industry body. They are our awarding body for our first aid courses, and I'll be using the standards within that first aid manual. I'll come on to the standards and criteria later on in the video. Just at the tail end of this section, you need to identify whether the learner undertaking the assessment has any additional needs. Okay, so as we know, we are supportive as assessors. If the learner does have any learning requirements, then please do state them within the box, and please do make any reasonable adjustments such as extra time. Please put NA if no extra time or no reasonable adjustments are required there. Just the final questions. Will there be a qualified assessor present? NA, there'll be no assessor present for this assessment. So just put NA if that's the same for you. And we have the learner declaration as well, the learner confirmation. So this is to say that the learner undertaking the assessment is happy for the assessment to take place. So we have Billy's type name there. We have an electronic signature followed by the date as well. So very important that we have the learner confirmation. Now we're just moving on to section 3. This is the assessment plan. So this section is all about providing the reader with information about the assessment. So the date, the time, so how long the assessment is, the location as well, the planned activity, and also the pre-assessment targets, and how the learner can prepare for their upcoming assessments. So in terms of the details with the dates, the time, the location, that is all quite straightforward. My assessment is going to be 1 hour long. I would strongly recommend that an assessment is no longer than 1 hour. So 1 hour maximum is my advice there. Planned activity, you need to describe what the assessment will entail. Okay, so this assessment will be myself observing Bill, who's one of our first aid trainers, to perform a few rounds of CPR. So he, as a trainer, is demonstrating his first aid skills, and I will be using these first aid at work criteria and standards. Okay, so I'll be using the criteria 4.1 and 4.2 from our first aid standards, which I'll come on to just in a moment. So I will see Billy perform his first aid instructor duties. Just on the right hand side of the form, any pre-assessment targets. Well, it's always good practice to give your learner some pre-assessment targets, perhaps, or any pre-reading material. So are there anything that you can do to prepare the learner for their assessment? It could be telling them perhaps a week in advance about the upcoming assessment, that they can perhaps watch a video, or they could perhaps do some reading just to re-familiar themselves with the upcoming assessments and the criteria as well. So perhaps provides some pre-assessment targets there. For this assessment, this is vocational 2. There are 2 assessment methods here: an observation, so otherwise known as a simulation, and questions to be asked to Billy. Are there any special requirements, any reasonable adjustments? NA if there's no adjustments required. And furthermore, we have a section where we need to sign off the assessment plan. So this is showing that the learner is happy to proceed with the assessment plan, that we honor this commitment. So we require a signature of the learner and also the candidate assessors. That's myself, who is observing Billy for this assessment. We're just moving on to section 4 now. Excuse me. So this is the criteria and standards page. So for every assessment, you need to show us what standards or criteria you are using to make a judgment call on the learners, their skills. Okay. Now, many people ask me, where can I find my standards? Where can I find my criteria? Okay. So you can find awarding body websites, or you could find any type of criteria or standards within perhaps a company handbook, or it could be any company policies, procedures, perhaps a staff handbook here. So you can find out some information very much just on how to perform your day-to-day job. And that's the role of the assessor, is seeing you perhaps within your day-to-day working role. Okay. Now, my advice is to find 1 to 2 pages of your standards or criteria. Keep it simple. You can number your standards or criteria, so please do keep it as simple as possible. And I'll show you why it's good to number your criteria or standards. So let's have a look at an example. So this is my criteria. As you can see, we have the FAIB, which is the first aid industry body. Then this is very much showing how to perform CPR. So as you can see there, this page has been taken from a first aid at work training manual, and as you can see, it has the different steps on how to perform CPR effectively. And they have 2 numbers, 4.1 and 4.2. That's going to be really, really useful when it comes to mapping and observing my learner. Okay. So when it comes to writing your own assessments, then please do try to find 1 or 2 pages. You can copy and paste your criteria into this section here. If you don't have any criteria or standards, you can of course write your own. You can number or letter your own standards and criteria, but please do aim for 1 to 2 pages maximum. So please do keep it as simple as possible. Okay. So once we have our criteria, once we have our planned activity, the next step is to observe your learner. So this here is the observation report. Okay, this can be typed or it can be handwritten as well. Okay, now the observation reports, this could be a page or 2 pages long. Now my advice, of course, is to remember to map the learner's performance against your criteria or standards, and also to remain objective as possible throughout the observation. As you can see here, we have some details. We have the learner name, so please put in the learner's name. The candidate assessor, that's myself. Okay, the date of the observation, the location. The assessment methods used are observation, followed by verbal questions as well. Okay. Now we're just on to these 2 columns. As you can see, we have the observation report and the evidence reference section. So in other words, when you are observing your learner, you need to write just a running commentary on what you observed. So this is all to do with being objective. You are writing what you observe. Okay. So this might take a while for you to become more familiar as an assessor, but you are being objective. You're writing what you observe. And on the right hand side, it's very important that you are mapping your your observation to your criteria here. So just going back to this page here, I'm of course using these numbers, and this is helping me to map what I observe to my criteria and standards. Okay. But the main thing is that you do observe your learner. Don't get too bogged down in writing too much. You could perhaps write some brief notes as long as you see the learner is performing the skill correctly. That's the main thing. And after the observation, then you can, of course, add more detail to your observation report. My advice is to keep it simple here. Okay. After the observation, you need to ask some questions to the learner. Okay, so it's very important we do that. So they perform their skill, and then you might say, "Thank you very much for showing me that performance." Okay, I'm going to ask you 5 to 6 questions about that assessment, and this is just going to really reaffirm. It's going to confirm their knowledge. Okay, so make sure that you ask a series of questions which are relevant to the observation, and also try not to confuse the learner. My advice is to pick 5 to 6 questions taken from the criteria or standards, and always remember to plan your 6 questions in advance, and you can of course write their response just in the box here. So just a few questions that I created. So question 1, what depth should the compressions be? And I have got obviously Billy's response there. Question 2 is what rate speed should the compression be performed? We're just talking about CPR here, and Billy's responded verbally. I've wrote down his answer there. Okay, so the question and answer stage might take somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes here. So keep it simple and write down the learner's response. Question 7 is photographic evidence. So for each assessment, you need to take somewhere between 5 to 6 photos. This is proof that the assessment has taken place. You don't need to include the face of the learner. So if you're working in an environment where photos are sensitive, you may wish to take photos of perhaps the assessment environment instead. But as you can see, just on my example here, we have 6 photos, and this is demonstrating the approach to the unconscious casualty, so the mannequin, how to respond, how to perform CPR, the compressions, and also the rescue breaths here. Now, what I have also done is I have explained how each of the photos what they mean, what they are demonstrating. So please do include perhaps 5 to 6 photos of your own assessment, and just explain what each photo is showing there as well. Once again, we require a signature from yourself, the candidate assessor, and also the learner undertaking the assessment as well, followed by the assessment date. Okay, we're on to very much the final stages of the assessment. So section 8 is the post-assessment feedback. The post-assessment feedback should be provided to the learner in private, away from the busy assessment environment, and it's away from any noises or distractions. So step 1, okay, ask the learner how they thought the assessment went. So I would ask Billy, for example, what did you think of your assessment? How did it go for you? They can provide you with their thoughts on how the assessment went, and they can, you know, talk about their own experiences, whether they thought they did well. They could talk about whether they found that they had enough time to prepare for the assessment. Were they comfortable within the assessment as well? So write down the learner's thoughts. Step 2, this is where you, the candidate assessor, are letting the learner know whether they have passed or if it's a reassessment. you're providing them with their strengths and perhaps any areas for development as well. Okay, so it's very important we let the learner know that whether they have passed or whether they have to perform the assessment again. And that's fine. If the learner has to perform the assessment again, then please do write that in your into your assessment template. That's fine there. Okay. We're on to section 9. So once you've provided the learner with their result and also their strengths and areas for development, this is the action plan and the assessment sign off. So the assessment is complete, but it's always good to give them some targets towards their next assessment. So targets could typically be to attend a future, perhaps CPD course, perhaps to shadow another trainer or assessor, even to perhaps read a staff handbook or specification. So perhaps give the learner a target, even if they've passed the assessment today with flying colors. You can give them perhaps an aspirational target, something that they can work towards there. So in my example, I provided obviously a target for Billy. So I'm going to observe him within one of his first aid courses, and I've asked him to revise the first aid trainer handbook as well. And lastly, you just need to get the learner to sign and date the assessment form, and you also need to sign and date the form as well. And that is the completed Vocational 2 assessment template. We hope you found this one useful. Okay. And if you have any questions at all when completing your own assessments, please do get in touch and we'll help you every step of the way. Thank you for watching.